Hey bestie, it's time for your next session of Real Talk Friend Therapy with your favorite big sister auntie queen, Daysha Veronica. What up? How are we doing this week, y'all? Listen, I am still hot and bothered because let me tell you, me in California, I'm like, California, put your dukes up. We about to fight, okay? Because California has not gotten the memo that it is fall and the temperature refuses to go below 80 degrees. Like, it is literally 97 degrees as I record this shit, and I cannot. All right? So we're fighting, okay? But even though California is being trifling, it's still spooky season. And I thought, what better time to talk about vampires, specifically energy vampires. Fun fact, as a child, I was obsessed with vampires. Like, literally every Halloween, I was either a vampire or I was a witch. It was always going to be one of those two. I lived for vampires, even though they scared the shit out of me. I just thought they were so sexy and mysterious and aloof, but also really sexy. Like, oh my God, I loved vampires. But energy vampires are a different story. Energy vampires are what we do not want to be, okay? You might remember on earlier episodes of the podcast that I, just humbly mentioned that I wrote a book. It's called Eat Your Way to Self-Confidence. It's available on Amazon if you want to check it out. And it's my non-traditional approach to weight loss. And part of what makes the book non-traditional is that I believe that our environment, and specifically the people that we have around us, that we hold near and dear to us, can deeply impact our ability to lose weight in ways that we aren't really thinking about. And, my offering is that maybe the weight that we need to lose first are some of the people that we've had in our lives for a long time, but they aren't really contributing much of anything positive or meaningful to our lives, that we should focus on that first before we focus on the physical weight. And so in chapter 4 of the book, I really explore all the ways in which our community, so our friends, our family, our loved ones, can either help or hinder our goals. And when I talk about goals, I'm also thinking about a big picture. So not just weight loss, but just life goals in general. And then offer some approaches on how to deal with those people. And it's actually in writing this chapter that it actually helped me make very pivotal shifts in my own community. And it's ultimately what inspired me to create this podcast. And I can't tell you, it was so cool because so when you're writing a book, they recommend that you should have test readers. And test readers are just people that you give an advanced copy of the book to for their feedback and their thoughts that you can kind of use as a quote. And so it was so cool for me because when I gave my test readers the book and I got their feedback, the most beloved chapter out of the book was the chapter on friendship. And I also have to say that it was my favorite chapter to write. I felt like it was the chapter where I realized that I needed to do the most work on in my own life. So again, the book is available on Amazon and I will link to it in the show notes. But in the book, I have a section on energy vampires that I want to focus on for our conversation today because learning about energy vampires was extremely transformative for me. Based on what I've read about empaths, I definitely think I am one. And for those that are new to the term or only have a vague idea, an empath is a person who is highly attuned to the emotions and energies of other people. And so I'll be transparent and say that it's not like an official condition that you can get tested for. Like, it's not something that's in the DSM. And for those who aren't in the psych world, the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's more in the woo-woo camp. But again, for me, as I've said in the past, I look for truth in things before I dismiss them. And so since learning about what other empaths describe as their experience in the world, I have found that it really fits me. And so I identify with it. Now, empath derives from the same root word as empathy, but it's not the same thing. It's not just being empathetic. It's like being empathetic on steroids. Like, it's being empathetic to the point where a lot of empaths will say it's like you're absorbing or taking on the emotions of other people around you, which I very, very strongly identify with. For me, meeting new people and being in crowded spaces Or I should say it's the combination of the two. I'm fine with meeting new people, but it's like if I'm meeting new people in a very crowded space, it's very challenging for me. And it's not because I'm shy. I might come off that way, but I'm not shy, as y'all know. But it's because I am actually very overwhelmed by everyone's energies around me. And, I still like to go out though, but it's why some people who might meet me for the first time, like if we're in like a super crowded space, they might be like, oh, she's quieter than I thought she'd be, or she's more reserved. That is definitely a descriptor that has been used on me before. And it's because I'm drained. It is a lot for me to be out just surrounded by lots of people. I have a very limited people battery when I'm out by myself. If I'm out with someone I know, that helps to extend the battery. But even then, it will depend on the person. Like if I'm out with an energy vampire, I'll be lucky if I make it through the door. And honestly, that curiosity and looking for truth in my experience is what got me into astrology and personality tests and things like that. Because I was so curious as to why, for instance, if I went out with a friend like Becky, I would feel so good and rejuvenated and my cup just felt so full. But then if I went out with another friend, and again, this is what's different about empaths, because a lot of people will know intellectually if their friend is being moody or throwing out a weird vibe or being closed off, but they can just ignore it because they're able to put their desire to have a good time over the weird vibe that their friend is giving off. They're like, I clock it, but you're not about to ruin this night for me, okay? I cannot do that. Or, okay, I should say that I've had to learn how to do it, but it's not easy for me. It is such a strain on me to ignore, and that's often why I'm drained. It's not easy for me to put other people's emotions to the side when they're doing that thing where they're like being quote unquote subtle about their weird mood, but not really. And I clock all of that shit and it won't leave me alone. It's like that annoying fly that just keeps flying around and you're like, get the fuck away from my face. Like that's what those emotions feel like. And when I was younger, it was awful because I felt like if I was direct about what I was sensing, I'd be seen as rude, or sometimes I was actually told I was being rude. Now I've learned to embrace my directness. And so I will just be like, girl, what's going on? What's good? Because you saying one thing, but I'm feeling another. And, I believe, because here's the thing, like, are there people who are direct and they're rude? Yes. But I think that there is a way to be direct that is real and a way to be direct that's rude. And I always try to come from a place of being real. And so I say all this to say that as an empath, it was always really easy for me to get swept up into the spell of an energy vampire because I'd sense their emotional problem. They'd dump all their negative energy on me. And then I would just be negative and moody all day. And I'd be like, why am I like this? Why am I mad? Why do I hate everything? And so while being an empath is more on the woo-woo side, energy vampires are not. They are recognized by many mental health practitioners as people who either intentionally or unintentionally zap your emotional energy. In an article on Psych Central, they describe energy vampires as people who constantly make you feel overstimulated, annoyed, apathetic, fatigued, and stressed. Jasmine Cobb, who's a trauma therapist from Tyler, Texas, adds that energy vampires are often codependent personalities. So this means they tend to gravitate towards others for need fulfillment, and they find it challenging to be self-sufficient. And she specifically says, an energy vampire is someone who repeatedly takes and lacks insight and awareness of how this contributes to interpersonal problems. And then Tina B. Tessina, who is a licensed psychotherapist from Long Beach, California, shares that other behaviors of an energy vampire include wanting you to always be available on their terms, expecting you to take responsibility for them, and using guilt to get you to do what they want. In the book, I write of energy vampires. Energy vampires are people in your life who take up a lot of your energy and often in negative ways. They are the people who make you second guess yourself or feel like shit in subtle ways. Knowingly or unknowingly, they like to take advantage of your willingness to be a positive and supportive force for them, but won't offer you the same energy in return. Whenever around them, You might instantly feel a sense of exhaustion or apprehension because you know they require so much pampering or sensitivity in order to maintain a pleasant mood. Shoot, even just the thought of being around them can make you ready for a nap, okay? But at their worst, an energy vampire can make you feel anxious, negative, hopeless, and or depressed, and completely hijack your focus or derail your efforts. They can really dull your shine and hold you back from being the person you've always wanted to be. And we can't have that. Not anymore. So today, as part of our Better You, Better Friends series on the podcast, I'm going to go over the 11 energy vampire profiles that I outline in the book that are based on energy vampires I encountered in my life. And I love that the title of this section is the 11 energy vampires you might need to say girl bye to. So I explain the profile and then I offer up whether or not I think your relationship can survive, or if you need to be like girl bye or boy bye too, or person bye. We acknowledge all genders here, but my goal with doing this is to not just help you identify people in your life that are energy vampires, but to also help you see where you might be an energy vampire, because I think that we all have the potential to be one. And so I would encourage you to also think about where you might be in these descriptions and what changes you could make to be a better friend to those around you. Again, in the book I write, energy vampires are often not bad people, but they do say things and engage in behavior that can be harmful and unproductive. Our focus with discovering who they are in our lives is to be honest about whether or not they have the capacity to change, or if we need to adjust how we interact with them. It is not for us to use as a weapon to read them for filth, okay? Because the same things could be said about you. Not all of them warrant dishing out a girl bye, and with firm boundaries in place, you can maintain the relationship, but keep an eye out for the few that I believe just cannot be salvaged, at least not by you. Okay, so I will preface this and say that when I wrote this book, I was in the middle of my emotional reckoning about friendships. So I was coming at my advice from a very deep, protect your peace, fuck them negative assholes place. And I don't acknowledge that to say that I was wrong for that, but more so that now I'm coming from a place of understanding that there are just some people that, for better or worse, we can't just excommunicate or cut out of our lives. Or let me not say can't, because taking people out of our lives is always an option. And listen, like your parents, your boss, your siblings, I don't care who it is always an option. And I want to be clear about that, because sometimes I think we box ourselves into choices that aren't true and we downplay our autonomy in the situation. So we say shit like, I can't excommunicate my mom, she's my mom. When really what you're saying is, I don't want to excommunicate my mom. We're saying, I acknowledge that something needs to be done about our relationship, something needs to change, but I don't want to stop speaking to her. There's a difference there. And I think it's important to rephrase it in that way because it puts your autonomy front and center. Autonomy is your power. It reminds you that you are in charge of the life that you want to live. And sometimes that means making hard choices. But as I talk about within the 4 Queen Commandments, and if that is new for anyone, because it's kind of long, I don't want to get into it right now, you can definitely, I'll put a link to them, but they're on the Yes Queen website. If you do the work and you get the clarity and the understanding of what you need for what's best for you, you can make that hard choice unapologetically. So choices are always going to be hard. You know, it is challenging to say, you know what, my mom just can't be the person that she needs to be. And I think that I need to not talk to her, right? My goal is to help you make more choices that you can be unapologetic about, choices that you can be 110% confident in. So when people want to be like, oh, you don't talk to your mom? Wow, that's crazy. It's like, no, I've done the work. This is what I have determined what is best for me. And you can feel how you want to feel about that, but I've done the work and I know what's right for me. Okay. And I will also say I'm excited to revisit these profiles to see if there are any new ways of thinking that I can offer for how to deal with some of these people now. All right, let's get into them. Our first energy vampire is what I call the "it's all about me" vampire. This energy vampire's first word was me. Everything that comes out of their mouth is always centered around what they're doing and how they're feeling, and every conversation you have with them is always about them. They never show a genuine interest in what you're up to and will look for any way to divert a conversation back to them. They feel a strong sense of entitlement to your attention and expect you to drop everything you're doing to tend to their needs, but would never offer you the same courtesy. And should you ever be unavailable to them in their time of need, you already know to expect an intense cold shoulder or many texts left unread. But ironically, they might have trouble seeing themselves in this description. Okay, so at the time that I wrote the book, in terms of whether or not I felt like this was a relationship that could thrive with boundaries or if you needed to say girl bye, I said this one's a firm girl bye. These kinds of energy vampires need to learn that in order to have quality friends, you need to be a quality friend. But their inability to see outside of themselves could make it difficult for them to really understand how to be that supportive friend you deserve. I would suggest cutting this person loose because at the end of the day, your job is not to teach people how to be decent people. Forget being a bad friend. Caring about other people's struggles and triumphs is like decent person 101. And if they can't even do that, then they need much greater help than what you can offer them. And so there's a part of me that still stands by that. But I think now, again, if this is someone that you do not want to excommunicate out of your life, that excommunicating them would be a little bit more complicated. I do think that this relationship could thrive with boundaries. Thrive is not the right word. This relationship can make it. This relationship can exist with boundaries. And if you're new here, we did a 3-part series on boundaries, what they are, how to communicate them, and how to deal with boundary crossers. So I highly recommend if you are someone that struggles with boundaries or you don't know how to make your own, please go back and listen to those episodes. But yeah, I think that, it's tough. Someone who is just so self-centered, I think for me, why I say girl bye is because, I guess it's for everything I just said. It's like, it's decent person 101 to be curious about your friends. And so someone that doesn't know how to be naturally curious about what other people are doing that are in their lives, that's a tough one. But when I think, to me, if there is someone in your life who is like this and you don't want to excommunicate them, the biggest boundary I think would be just limiting the amount of time that you spend with them. Or maybe, I think a boundary that I've seen some people set is they will only hang out with a particular person in a group setting versus individually. So my advice now would be, if you want to try and make this relationship work, I would first figure out what is the boundary that they violate for you. So if you spend a lot of time with them, that's a violation. Like if you spend a lot of time with them or you give them a lot of your time, that is a violation of your time boundary. And so for that, I would say I'm not going to be as available for them as they want me to be. I will only make myself available when I genuinely feel like doing whatever the thing is that they want to do. But if I have no desire to want to do it, I'm not going out of my way. I'm going to respect that I don't want to do it. So I think that you should identify what is the boundary that you tend to violate with this type of person. Maybe you let them talk forever about themselves. And so then the boundary for that would be, okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to talk about yourself. And then after that, I'm either leaving, I will find a polite way to segue out of the conversation, I will do X, Y, and Z, but I'm not going to just let you talk my ear off about yourself and not ask me about me, Again, decent person 101. So I personally would extremely limit the amount of time I spent around a person like this. But if that is something that you don't want to do, and that's okay, I don't feel like you need to do the thing that people do where it's just like, but they're my mom, I can't, I think you need to honor that you want to maintain a relationship with your mom, and that's fine. You do not have to prove why you want to maintain a relationship with your mom. I think you do need to understand, though, if it's something that you want and why it's important to you. And then think about how can you interact with them in a way that protects your energy, protects your peace. You know, it's not just you giving them all your time willy-nilly. Okay, vampire number 2 is what I call the always having a shit day vampire. This energy vampire is always the winner of the oppression Olympics and constantly playing the blame game. They always have a sob story on deck about how they were taken advantage of or not given enough time to prepare. They are never willing to take accountability for how they might have played a role in their negative situation, nor do they want you to show them how they could have. And they never want to talk about solutions for how to get out of their situation. They thrive off of being a victim and blaming others for their shortcomings. So for this relationship, I said that you could approach it with boundaries. And so due to our negativity bias, it's not surprising that someone would focus more on their pile of shitty problems or how they always get the short end of the stick. But it's their refusal to take accountability and learn from their problems. That means that you're going to have to go through these negative emotions with them all the fucking time, which is tiring. And so from my experience, you can't force someone to want to learn from their mistakes, and trying to could only backfire and create a fight. So instead, what's best, and I still stand by this, everything I'm reading, I'm like, yeah, I still stand by this. You just set a boundary. You limit the amount of time or the circumstances under which you'll hang out, and, you know, limit that to a time where you believe that they'll be in a good mood. And I know that this isn't an exact science, but, you know, think about the times in which you can be around them and things are good. What are you doing? Who are you hanging out with? How can you recreate that environment? And I know this might feel shallow, but we have to protect our energy. And someone who's not willing to grow from their hard times is not being considerate of the emotional demands that it requires of you to constantly be hearing about the shit that they're going through. So I still stand by this. I think that with boundaries, this relationship can be okay, but it's hard for me to imagine that a real depth can grow from this relationship if somebody lacks the ability to take accountability. I think accountability is huge in a relationship because it means that somebody cares enough to not want to hurt you or do something bad or whatever the case may be. Like, there is enough investment to where they want to make sure that they're doing right by you. And so, yeah, if somebody lacks the ability to take accountability, that's a red flag to me. And so I think the relationship can be okay. I think you can have one. I just don't think it'll be a super deep one. And that's where I stand. So good job on me in the past. I like this one. Okay, energy vampire number 3, the I know what's best vampire. This vampire believes that they are the keeper of all the knowledge in the world, and thus they will always have the best solution to your problems, even if you didn't ask for it. They insert their opinion everywhere it's not wanted and often position their opinion to your issue as the only correct solution. For them, they love to be in control and feel like you are dependent upon them for guidance. They tend to be master manipulators and love to keep everyone in positions of inferiority to them by constantly one-upping them and distorting how much they really know. So, for this one, I wrote that it would be a girl bye for me. And my reasoning was, I'm a Leo. What up, Leo gang? So I don't do well with people who attempt to exert control over me. However, I also believe that with a firm boundary, you could still maintain a friendship from a distance. For this type of person, it's important to let them know that you heard them and appreciate their input, but that you make the final say in your decisions. Once you firmly establish that you are not someone that they control, they are much more likely to either respect it and or to just move on. So I still stand by this. I think that with these types of people, they're just looking for who's going to validate their desire to be in control. And so I think that with the boundary, it really has to be a firm boundary. I mean, all boundaries should be firm, but with this type of person, I think that the relationship will work best for you if you can just be really clear and be like, like, thanks, appreciate your input, I'll think about it. Just let them know that you are somebody that takes control over your life. They're really looking for people that they can kind of shepherd and people that they feel like will be the sheep in their flock. And so if you can make it clear to them up front that you're not that type of person, they'll kind of do the work of being like, well, I'm not really all that interested because you're not letting me control you the way I want. I'll also say for this type of person that I feel like they can be prone to gaslighting. And so the advice that I would offer is just to not fall for it. Don't take the bait. I think that there are people who might, so for instance, they might gaslight you and be like, oh, look, it's Miss Independent and she don't need no help. And, she makes all her decisions and blah, 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 blah. They might say stuff like that to almost like use reverse psychology to get you to fall under their control. So I would just be like, yeah, sing Miss Independent by Kelly Clarkson. Like, don't take the bait would be my ultimate advice for this type of person. So yeah, I stand by this one. Energy vampire number 4, the never let you get a word in vampire. So similar to the it's all about me vampire, this person talks a lot and is not concerned about your thoughts and opinions. However, their motives do not originate from an entitled or manipulative place. For them, they're just looking for an audience to listen to what they have to say and to provide them with only the feedback that they want. It's definitely not a dialogue when you're talking to these types of people, and they thrive on the attention that they get from others, regardless of who it is. So with this type of person, again, they aren't, so with the it's all about me person, the reason why it would be a firm girl bye is because they just don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about you, but they really want your attention. And they are specific about who they are going after to give them attention. Whereas with the never let you get a word in vampire, they're looking for attention from anybody. It doesn't matter who gives it to them, but as long as they see that you're making eye contact and you're doing all the active listening stuff, they're like, oh, I got you, hook, line, and sinker. Like they're just really someone that's just like, I just want someone to listen to me. They're just looking for a crowd. So for this type of person, I said that I think boundaries can work well. Again, all they're after is attention. So if you give it away too freely, that is what will keep them coming back to you. But if you can let them know gently that you're not always available, then they'll just quickly move on to the next source of attention that they can get. So for them, it is purely about attention. Whereas with the all about me vampire, it's about manipulation. It's about power. It's about control. So that is the difference that I see between the two of those. So again, I just think asserting yourself and being like, hey, I'd love to hear this story, but I gotta go do X, Y, and Z. It was really great hearing you. Maybe you want to text me, or again, like maybe it's someone that like y'all have a relationship through text and that's how y'all kind of communicate, because then you can control the conversation and your attention a little bit more. But yeah, all they're really after is attention. So with this person, I still stand by this advice. Just make it clear to them that you're not an open port of attention, that you're just not always going to be there with ears open, ready to devour every word that comes out of their mouth. Okay, energy vampire number 5, the world is always on fire vampire. Oh my God, this one, man, I've just had real personal experience. All right, let's get into it. These types of vampires have an exclamation point on almost every damn thing they say. Everything that happens to them in the course of a day is considered high stakes, life or death, and is always hella embellished. Knowingly or unknowingly, they can be very manipulative. Some use their bold personality and highly embellished storytelling skills to emotionally overwhelm those around them into doing what they want or letting them off the hook for their mistakes. Okay, so this one was very personal to me. There was someone in my life who was very much like this. And I'm going to read what I wrote first before I talk about my experience. So I wrote, interestingly enough, I would attempt to try boundaries with this person before I delivered a girl bye. And my reasoning behind that is because some of these energy vampires aren't even aware that they're draining you or that you feel like they are emotionally manipulating you. They often just have a very over-the-top personality and then lack the perspective to understand that they might be coming off as tiring or manipulative. So I would first suggest having an honest heart-to-heart with these types to see how they respond. Now, the difficulty with this advice is that some of them run the risk of blowing everything you're saying out of proportion, but the more genuine ones will appreciate the honesty. But if that sounds too intimidating, however, then I would just limit the amount of time that you spend with these types and always speak from a place of honesty with them, since they tend to live in the world of exaggeration. Or I said, you could just say, girl, bye. Okay, so now for my personal experience. It's so hard because when I think about the particular person that I wrote this for, I really, really, really care about this person. And I don't think that they were trying to be manipulative, but their energy, oh my God, just everything being so high stakes, every single little thing. It could be, the pizza shop didn't have my favorite slice of pizza and how dare they and da 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 da, and just everything was rah-rah, right? And, it's just one of those things where I'm like, girl, it's like, it's 9 a.m. Why are you trying to fight the coffee shop person? Why are you trying to fight the barista? They just didn't have matcha today. It happens. It happens. It is not personal. It is not an attack or an affront to who you are. And yeah, it's just so challenging because this person could be very kind and very supportive and very wonderful in so many other ways, but this aspect of their personality just made it really challenging. So I will say personally, I haven't decided what to do with this relationship. I have kind of taken a break from it, but I will say that I think this person in particular affects me a lot because I'm an empath. It goes back, like, they would drain my people battery so quickly and easily. And yeah, I will say that I'm still personally working through, because I will say I tried boundaries with this person and, maybe my boundaries needed to be firmer. But yeah, so I think that I'm learning, because I still stand by, I believe that with this type of person, honesty is key. And I think that for me at the time of our relationship, I really struggled with being honest with people because I always felt like in the past, my honesty got me into trouble. And I just didn't want to be in trouble with people no more. But I am learning, I am on my own journey, again, that my honesty can be real and not rude. And it's about being perceptive and really working with that balance. And so, yeah, I think that I got tired of being honest and feeling like I was being a villain. However, they were not making me feel like a villain. I just felt that way. And so again, that's something that I needed to work on. But yeah, so I stand by this advice, but I also, it's challenging. So if you have to walk away, like I said, I walked away. I haven't completely walked away from the relationship, but I had to walk away for now. And we'll see what happens. Because I'll also say that with all of these, I think it's important to leave room for people to evolve and to change. You know what I'm saying? I think I'd mentioned it in one of the prior episodes about my concept of a relationship intermission. Sometimes when we become friends with someone, I firmly believe that our friendships are a reflection of where we're at in life. And so sometimes we're not in the best headspace and we make friends with people because they are a reflection of the fact that we're like, oh my gosh, my life sucks. And they're like, oh my God, my life sucks too. And you're bonding over how much your life sucks. But then, maybe life gets better for you, but maybe life doesn't get better for them. And now you've become somewhat incompatible because the thing that you bonded over was the fact that your life sucked. But your life doesn't suck anymore. But theirs still does. For whatever reason it may be for them. It might not actually suck, but that's their perspective, right? Whereas for you, it really was like, my life just sucked in this moment, but I am not somebody that has a pessimistic outlook on life. And so with those kinds of relationships, it's tough because you're like, there are elements outside of our pessimism that I really enjoyed. And I thought that we were going to be deeper friends. But now I'm realizing that maybe you are more pessimistic than I am. And that might not work for me. So then it's like, and I'll say that I'm even trying to figure out, it's like, how do I, like, maybe I made you higher in my ring chart than you should have been. Because of where I was at in life. And so how do I move you down a ring? Like that's tough. That's hard. I'm still navigating it. Of course, I will share where I officially land on it. But ultimately, I still stand by the advice, but know that like I am working through this myself. This one's still a tender one for me. Okay. Energy vampire number 6, the two-faced vampire. Now, it's important to keep in mind with these types of vampires that being two-faced isn't just about being mean to some and nice to others. It is about detecting inconsistency in how the person presents and talks about themselves or how they act. If they say they are over having unreliable friends, but then don't show up when you need them, that's an important inconsistency to pay attention to. If they say that they want to be all about positivity, but constantly make rude and negative comments about everything and everyone, that's an important inconsistency to pay attention to. With these types of vampires, it usually means that they talk a good game, but do not have the ability or the intention to live up to their words, which can mean having them in your circle. It can be draining because you're constantly having to try and be like, wait a minute, you said you were like this, but then you act like this. You're constantly having to double check everything they say. So for this, I wrote, this is a firm girl bye for me, depending on what they are inconsistent about. Some people are in a place of exploration about who they are and who they want to be, and that can contribute to them appearing as inconsistent. Some could also come from a difficult background that forced them to be one way that they are fighting to change. But those that are changing their opinions or their position on a situation every 5 minutes to fit into popular opinion are not my type of people. It often means that they are very insecure and that if you ever do something against popular opinion, they will abandon you with the quickness. This is definitely not a vampire to get attached to at all. And I 100% still stand by this. I can remember very clearly who I wrote this about, and I'm kind of sad that it took me as long as I did to recognize that they were this type of person and that they were being this big of an energy drain on me. But yeah, as soon as I realized it, I dropped that relationship with the quickness, haven't looked back. Or I shouldn't say I haven't looked back. I will say that occasionally I will look back and be like, oh my God, thank God I dropped them when I did. So I look back with fondness about the fact that I dropped them. Yeah, it's just, these people are so, and again, with all energy vampires, there's nuance to the situation, right? For me and the particular person that I wrote this about, I am happy that I did it. My life has never been better without them in it. But I do still think that, it depends. Like, and even with this person, this is somebody that I know was raised in a very particular type of environment. I'm like, how do I describe this without outing the person? Yeah, I feel like this person grew up in an environment that was, we'll just say it was very negative. And I could tell that they were really trying to be different from how they were raised. But there were just core things about their personality that I was like, this is going to be a really tough uphill battle. And you say that you're up for it, but your behaviors did not feel like you were up for it. I felt like they really came off eventually feeling like a snake oil person to me, where they wanted to sell this idea of change and evolution when I could tell that they weren't doing the work to actually change and be evolved. So I think with this type of person, it really just comes back to like, are they doing the work? Because we can all talk a good game about how we want to change and be different and la, la, la. But if you're not doing the work, then you're never going to be different. And so for me, when I realized that, I was just like, I'm just always going to be going through this bullshit with them. So dropped it, and I am happy as a clam. I can't tell you how happy I am. So nuance is key. Context is key. Every situation is different. And with this type of person, it really comes down to like, do you really see them doing the work? All right. So for this next one, I write, this type of person needed a whole new species to really underscore their personalities. So this is what I call a hyena vampire. if you will. This person is someone who thrives off of negativity, literally can't get enough of it. They can't wait to talk shit about anyone or anything, and they usually travel in packs with other vampires or hyenas. They love spending their time searching for anyone to throw them a juicy steak of gossip or a misfortunate story to tear into, and trust that they will never be truly happy for you when you win. This type of energy vampire can be hard to detect because when alone with them, they can come off as nice or decent. But once they get into a herd with other hyenas, it's like a negativity vortex that you often feel you can't escape without getting involved to avoid being ostracized. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely people in situations that warrant being shit-talked, okay? But the difference with hyenas is that they will quickly go to all the lengths possible to basically dehumanize or belittle their subject of choice. It's the type of shit talking that can start innocently, but then by the end of it, you feel gross about how far the conversation went. They will often hate people for existing or being themselves, and never because the person has done something to them worthy of being mad about. And when you press them about why they don't like the person, it's often a vague grumbling of hearsay or passed down opinions, or one-dimensional assumptions that they can't explain further. Like, they say things like, because she's boring, or because he sucks. Just like really vague shit where you're like, okay. You will often experience these types of energy vampires in conditional situations. So think work, school, extracurricular hobbies and classes, any type of situation where you're around people that you don't really have a choice to be around. So this one was also super personal for me. I'm also trying to decide, I'm like, do I want to out these people about where I met them? Because as soon as I say where I met them, certain people who know me will be like, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. But I will just say for now that these were people and I met them in a conditional circumstance where I didn't really have a choice. I had to be around them. And oh my God. So I wrote, as far as advice, this is a firm girl bye for me. These types of people often struggle to think for themselves and have a hard time deciphering emotional nuance due to deep insecurity. They either love people or hate people and can feel very juvenile by how they talk about or deal with their problems with others. They only know how to feel better about themselves by tearing down other people and will often leave you feeling like, damn, this is what it takes for you to hate people. So in my experience, from what I saw, they will likely never be happy for you when you win and will oftentimes be extremely jealous. They only want to be miserable, and anyone who threatens their misery will get it the worst. So that is automatically girl bye. However, because I know this type of energy vampire is often found in conditional situations, so situations where you have to interact with them because of a shared interest or commitment, and that it might be difficult to completely avoid them, I would suggest really setting them firm boundaries and to only interact when you are talking about or participating in the shared interest or commitment. So these particular people that I was forced to share space with, I couldn't, there was a particular person that we knew of, and this particular person, like, they weren't the coolest person, but like, I don't know, like, it just takes a lot to not like someone. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to say that the person is like, they're a little weird or, they're not my cup of tea, but to hate someone and like actively discuss it, that takes a lot of energy. You feel me? And so I will say that there are not a lot of people that I actively don't like. There are a lot of people who maybe I don't fuck with, but like active disdain for somebody takes energy. So I really try not to be about that. And so that's what was really challenging about being in this group, is that the people that I was with, the hyenas that I identified, it just felt like they were always looking for something or someone to just talk shit about. And I'm just like, I just don't have it in me. I really don't. I don't. And of course they turned on me, and that was fine though. I knew it was coming, but I say for this one, as soon as you recognize it, steer as clear as possible, because again, they're going to turn on you. They always do, because they're not happy. They're very insecure and very unhappy. And like, here's the thing, like for the conditional situation that we were in, like I was insecure about it too. I didn't think I belonged there either. But I didn't want to be insecure, and that was the difference. And so I worked very hard to work on my confidence and being like, no, I belong here. I deserve to be here. And I could just tell that these people, they had no interest or desire in growing or being different. Like I did. I honestly, people, it's the type of shit that people will say, oh, I felt like I was in high school again, or I was in middle school again. But for them, I'd be like, that's disrespectful to high schoolers and middle schoolers. I feel like I know high schoolers and middle schoolers that were more mature about dealing with their anxiety and insecurity than they were. Like, these were grown people that I was like, y'all gotta get a life. Y'all gotta find shit to do. Because when you have shit to do, you don't have time to be hating people like that. And I was like, y'all got too much time on your hands. You really need to find something to do. So, yeah. For me, with this, girl, bye. Nah. All right. So number 8 is the slow drip vampires, aka what I call hyena light. So this type of vampire is similar to a hyena in that they can't wait to point out the negatives in a situation. However, their negativity isn't as loud or upfront. Their negativity is actually a lot more subtle, making them very hard to detect at first until it all hits you suddenly in the face one day. This is because typically they are very sweet, genuine people who do care about you, but due to their own insecurities or negative upbringing, they can't help but always be the one to point out the bad in things. You could say it's how they were taught to show love, to never let the ones they care about look stupid, right? So their negativity will drip out of them over time and constantly having you feel confused because you know they care about you, but you hate how negative they can be, that they're always showing their love through their negativity. So you'll try to regard their negativity as coming from a good place, quote unquote. So for this, I wrote, for this type of person, I would say it's really up to you. What complicates the situation is the fact that their desire to be negative is not out of spite, but actually out of genuine concern. They don't mean to derail you from your goals, and having a heart-to-heart with them might actually help them realize their negative attitude and help them to make those necessary changes. But again, you have to take into consideration that this is probably how they were raised to show love, which means that it could take a lot of energy on your part to get them to be less negative. So I would say that it has to be someone that you feel is worth investing that kind of time, or that developing a boundary around what you tell them or when you hang out with them will ultimately be the best solution. And so with this energy vampire, I will actually reveal who they were. This energy vampire was inspired by my boyfriend, my love. So my boyfriend, sweetest, genuine, kindest guy, but definitely errs on the side of cynicism, and I don't call him outright pessimistic, but he's definitely always questioning things, always like, he just doesn't, what is the word I am looking for? But he's not somebody, he doesn't fall for shit very easily. He really doesn't. And there's a part about that aspect to his personality that I love. But again, because I am an empath, his energy can really affect me. Again, still super, and I think the reason why we are able to be together, because genuinely in his heart, he is such a kind person. But I mean, it doesn't change the fact that when he's always pointing out the bad or the flaws or whatever, that is just like, it's very demotivating. And so I've had to have a heart-to-heart with him about this. And it really hurts him that sometimes I'm like, hey, I need you to go because otherwise I don't feel motivated to work. And he's like, damn, like, that hurts, And so because of that, and because of that honesty, he has really worked on it. And, to the point where the other night I was having a negativity spiral about being unemployed and how I needed to find a job and, how stressed out I was about money and stuff like that. Like, I had the tarot cards out, y'all. Like, it was that bad. Like, I was just like, universe, we need to have a conversation. When am I going to get a job? And he was so positive about it all. Like, because I know that he can be prone to negativity, I have personally set a boundary about when I share things with him. But again, in this moment, tarot cards out, I was just like, I was in it. So, I let it out. And I'm glad that I did, because it was so beautiful to see the way that he has changed and the way that he has evolved because of the honesty that I gave to him. Because I was just like, oh, it's so hot and I want to use the AC, but we don't have any money for that. Like, we have to be very meticulous. And he was like, girl, we'll figure it out. You know, I'll make it work. I'll go donate plasma if I have to. Like, we'll figure it out. And that was just I was like, oh my God. Like, I appreciated, because yeah, the person that he would have been, you know, maybe like, we've been together for like 8 years now. So, you know, person that I was dating in like year 2, I don't think would have been like that. And so that's why I say that it really has to be someone that you think is worth investing the time in, because I could tell through being honest that it bothered him and that he wanted to work on it and has actively tried to work on it since. So it really is about whether or not you think being honest with this person will allow them to grow. Okay, next vampire, number 9, is the I'm just being real vampire. And I write, Lord. First word, Lord. This vampire is such a fucking asshole. There is no other word to describe them. But what's even worse about them is that they parade around their meanness as just keeping it real. Now listen, I'm all for realness, but this person is not being real. They're just looking for an excuse to not be held accountable for what they say. And the worst of them love to dish it out, but crumble to pieces when facing their match. They always make you feel terrible, but you feel like you need them, or they make you feel like you need them because they are your real friend. But please keep in mind that realness and rudeness are not the same thing. So as far as boundaries are girl by, I write, insecurity is deep at the root of this vampire's behavior. Most of the vampires that I've encountered in life like this tend to act like this out of jealousy. It is very similar to people who always tell backhanded jokes or compliments. They feel threatened by you and thus respond negatively. But then to save face, they use jokes and humor, compliments, quote unquote realness to mask their hostility. So ultimately, as you might have guessed, this would be a girl bye for me, because these types of vampires are not easy to have hearts to heart with. They have a hard time accepting constructive criticism by someone they are threatened by, and oftentimes end up being repeat offenders. Now, you could attempt to establish a boundary, but again, these vampires are really bad at taking accountability for their faults and could treat your attempts to establish a boundary in a childish way. But if you wanted to establish a boundary, I would suggest limiting what you tell them, which to me, it's kind of like, what's the point of even calling them your friend, right? So I still stand by this, but thinking about the idea that, you know, if this kind of vampire is a family member or a coworker and you kind of have to interact with them, oh God, yeah, it really comes down to limiting what you say to them and just being very cognizant of what you are sharing will likely get some sort of like BS response. When I think about, there is a family member, and I will leave it at that. There is a family member that I know of who has this energy. And so to protect myself, I just kind of let them talk, you know? I'm just kind of like, but I will let them talk, but they know that I am not one to cross. So I think it's important to stick up for yourself and to let them know that you are not somebody to push around. But yeah, for the most part, I let them talk their realness, and I let them, you know, say what they need to say. And I don't know, I just find them to be they just want to be inflammatory. Like, they thrive off of being like, oh, I pissed you off. So I don't give them that satisfaction. I let them talk or I leave. But again, like, if there's a certain thing that they know that they've crossed the line about, I will be like, you've crossed the motherfucking line, right? So I would say 90% of the time, just let them talk their shit. Maybe even 95% of the time, because it's really not worth it. They thrive off of knowing that they pissed you off. But also, don't make it seem like you are a pushover. Don't make it seem like they can make you leave, right? You want to let them know that there are certain lines that they cannot cross. You want to say 95% of your offensive shit, whatever. But this shit right here, I'm not playing with that, okay? So that is as far as the boundary will go for me. But I think that if you can it's just, I don't know. Like, all I can say is for the people who I've ever met like this, I put so much distance between me and them. I can't do it. I can't. I don't have time. Okay. The next vampire is what I call the are we good vampire. This vampire isn't typically negative, but they can often send you hot and cold vibes about the current standing of your relationship that make you want to ask every 5 minutes, hey, are we good? Their support when given is great, but it is very unreliable. You never feel like your friendship is a priority to them, and they are constantly rescheduling or canceling on you. They are both equally distant and present at the same time, which makes you feel like you never have a firm grasp over whether or not they are your friend. So I will say transparently, so I've had someone be like this to me, but being honest and being real, I was also thinking about, I was like, I see how I could be this type of energy vampire to somebody else. So I said, so for this vampire, in terms of boundaries or girl bye, I think establishing a boundary would work well to start. I often don't think there's malicious intent. Like, I know for me, it's not me being malicious. And if somebody just came to me and was just like, hey, like, you just make me feel like I don't know where we stand as friends, I would be like, oh shit, okay, you want to take this to the next level? Like, boom, like, this is what I'm looking for, okay? So that's how I would be. And I think having a heart-to-heart with someone like this, where you thoughtfully outline your concerns and what you need to feel more secure in the relationship, could create improvements. However, for the worst of this vampire type, they could be passive-aggressive and agree to improvements in order to avoid the confrontation, but then go back to doing the same old. So I would just be mindful of that fact when deciding what to do. And yeah, I still stand by that. Again, this was partially inspired by me. And yeah, I'll say for the person that I had this experience with, I feel like it went okay. You know what I'm saying? So I brought it up. I feel like the person was in their feels, but then they came back to me and they said, I really appreciate you being honest with me. And I don't know, it's hard to say. I wouldn't say that we're in a bad place. I think we're chill. We're cool. Like, whenever I see them, I'm happy to see them. I wouldn't necessarily say I still feel, I don't know, this one's challenging because I know this person loves me. I know this person cares about me so deeply. I just don't, but I don't know, like, if I were to be honest about whether or not I think a lot has changed, I'm not sure. This is someone who I would say is probably, I would like them to be ring 1, and I think the only reason why they are ring 2 for me is because they just struggle with making me feel confident in the relationship. But I would love for them to be ring 1. I would. I think that they're fabulous. I think they're amazing. I adore them. But yeah, so you can have a heart-to-heart. I stand by the advice. Have the heart-to-heart. I just, I can only speak for myself in knowing that I partially inspired this profile, and that, like, the minute someone is honest and direct with me, I do my best to shape up. I'm like, oh my goodness, I want you to know that I hear you. I respect the courage that it takes for you to be honest. And so I'm going to shape up. I might need some reminders, but I want you to know that you're never nagging me or making me think poorly of you by being honest with me. So I know that I think that I can be that for people. And so I'll just say this right now, just reach out and I will be happy to let you know if we're good or not good, right? So there are some people I've intentionally put distance in between, and they know it. And I think the reason why they don't reach out is because they don't want to hear what I have to say, and that's fine. But ultimately, if you ever felt weird, if, time has gone by, because I'm also real busy too, and you just kind of don't know where we stand, just reach out. I'll be happy to tell you. I really will. I'll be like, oh my gosh, we are so good. Life has just been lifing, But if we're not good, I think y'all can tell by now from what my friends have said about me. I will happily let you know that I'm we're not good for X, Y, and Z reasons and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, for the person that I was dealing with, I think the best advice I have to offer, if you do have a heart-to-heart, but maybe things don't change as much, all you can really do is be honest and then prioritize accordingly. So again, like I said, I would love for this person to be more in my ring 1 circle, but I feel like I've kind of put that out there. And, you know, again, we can only have so many friends in our ring one circle, right? And so, you know, maybe that person just doesn't have the capacity for me, and that's fine. That's actually where I would then say that they are not actively being an energy vampire as much as it is that I am letting this relationship be an energy vampire. You know what I'm saying? Like, this person is kind of clearly articulating that they don't have space for me in that top tier. And, you know, that doesn't mean that they'll never have space for me. Maybe one day we'll both have space for each other. But right now, they don't have the space, and I need to respect that. And so then I need to stop letting it take up so much energy in my life. And this is actually a great segue into our last vampire, which is what I call the worrywart vampire. So this is the type of person who is always first to raise concern with everything you tell them in a very anxiety-inducing way. When you tell them your goals, they only see the risk and not the reward. And worse, they are really good at transferring their anxiety onto you. Now, this is not to say that everyone who questions your goals and ideas is being a worrywart, but there's a big difference between someone who thoughtfully raises concerns so as to help you think about all of your angles, and then someone who's raising concerns as a means of making you fearful. This vampire can usually mean well, but can also be someone who uses their raised concerns as a manipulation tactic to demotivate you intentionally. So be mindful of who you think you're dealing with here. There's also an internal manifestation of this vampire that can live in all of us. And for me, that's when we obsessively worry about things to the point of exhaustion, demotivation, and stagnation. I think, it's analysis paralysis, I think, is a great way to think about it. We analyze to the point of just not being able to make any choices. So it's when we let our worry transform into fear, and then we let that fear suffocate us. So as far as dealing with the people who are like that in your life, I would either establish a firm boundary or have a conversation. So in the book, I talk about this effect that's called the Rosenthal effect. And so these two scientists did a study and came to the conclusion that being around people who you even perceive as thinking you will fail will likely lead to that outcome. But I also understand that for some of these people, their concerns are coming from a place of love. They just might not be good at expressing those concerns in a helpful way. So if you really care about this person, I would plan out a heart-to-heart and let them know the impact that their worry is having over your motivation. And I believe if they really care about you, they will learn to trust you. But if you don't think that a conversation will lead to a positive outcome, then I suggest limiting what you tell them or when you tell them, and only share information when you feel confident enough to withstand their worry. And then for the internal manifestation of this vampire in yourself, I would say that you need to build more trust in what you're doing. And so again, this is why the 4 Queen Commandments are so valuable. And I will link to that in the show notes. Oh, I kind of explain it here. Okay, I'll keep reading. Worry is a manifestation of fear. Fear is a signal that we don't trust something, and a lack of trust usually derives from a lack of clarity or understanding. So then when you know what you're doing, and that's through getting clarity, and you have planned out action and steps that put you in control, I believe that this will allow you to build the trust, which is confidence, necessary to eradicate your fears, stop your worries, and make the choices that you want. And so that is essentially the 4 Queen Commandments. It is clarity, control, confidence, and choices. So you can definitely learn more about those pillars that I created on the Yes Queen website. Oh my gosh. And then I'm looking here. Let me tell y'all, if you write a book, please do not, I had to learn this the hard way, do not quote people who are still alive. Because if you quote people who are still alive, there is time for them to act a fool and to do stupid shit. And then you're like, oh my God, why did I quote this crazy person? Because now the world sees them as a crazy person. But when I quoted them back then, they weren't crazy. Because, so I'm looking at this quote because I used to love Amber Rose. I really did. I went to her slut walks. I was all in for Amber Rose. And so I read her book, How to Be a Bad Bitch. I really loved it and I quoted it. And now, as you all know, Amber, she's just not the same person. And I think I also quoted J.K. Rowling before she came out as being transphobic. And so, like, moral of the story is, if you're writing a book, do not quote people who are alive, because there's just too much time for them to act a fool and then make you feel like, oh my gosh, why did I quote this person? These people are going to think I'm like these people, but I'm not. I am not. So if you read the book, just keep that in mind. I quoted these people before they showed us who they really were. Only quote dead people. But I will say, I still find value in this quote that I took from her book. So the quote is, no matter how long you've known someone, you don't owe them shit if they're lying to you or treating you badly. And that's some real shit. I think that I am so excited to do an episode about this because I think it's one of the most common misconceptions about how we should prioritize our friendships, is that we believe that just because someone has been in our life for 10, 15, 20, however many long ass years, that is what means that they're our best friend, or that time means that that's why we should be loyal to them. And to me, it's never made any sense. It's the same thing with romantic relationships and marriages. We say, oh my gosh, how beautiful that you guys have been together for 20, 30 years. But it's like, if it was 20, 30 years of lying and not trusting and, just a whole bunch of bullshit, I just don't think that should be celebrated. I love hearing that people have been friends for 20, 30, however many years. But the key thing in loving that length is also hearing them talk about how amazing it's been to have this person in my life and the joy that they add and the substance and the, all of the good stuff. So it's not just about time. It's got to be about the quality of the time as well that we prioritize. And so I hope by having this discussion about energy vampires today, that you are able to use this information not as a way to, again, read your friends for filth or, look for drama in your relationship, right? Like, it's really meant to help you understand why maybe certain relationships or certain people you have a better time with than others, and then to make a decision about how you move forward in that relationship. Again, some people, as lovely as they can be in some aspects of their personality, we're not meant to be all things to all people. And so just because that someone maybe is a victim vampire, or there are somebody that's I'm trying to think of some of the other like kind of mid type of vampires, like the person that just kind of wants attention. I don't think that means that you have to end the friendship. I just think it means it's like, okay, like it gives you the ability to think about how you can frame this relationship for success on your end, and how you can protect your peace, protect your power, and have successful relationships with people on all aspects of your rings, because all of the rings are important. We can't be ring one type of friends to all people. And so it's really just making sure that the people that you consider ring one friends, if they are kind of energy vampire-ish, what can you do to protect your peace? What can you do to kind of see them for who they are and negotiate, right? Because all relationships are a negotiation. And then if they're kind of more on the more serious side of energy vampiring, so the ones where I was kind of like, it sounds like a girl bye to me. Life is hard. Choices are tough, but it all comes back to what kind of life do you want to live and what kind of people do you want to have along for that ride. Remember that I also have people in my life where I cut them out and I feel so good. And then there are some people where I'm like, I needed a break, and the break is helping me realize, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And so I'm realizing that I don't want that person out of my life forever, but that there are changes that I need to make. There are things that kind of need to be done in order for this relationship to actually function. So don't be afraid of the hard choices. All right, that's all I have for this week. I hope you found this episode helpful. Again, if you want to read more of my book, it is Eat Your Way to Self-Confidence. It is only available on Amazon, and it's only available for digital download. There are so many things I wanted to do with this book, and then the pandemic happened and life got so hectic for me. So it's a goal of mine to go back and flesh it out and do some other things and get physical copies and do all these things, but one day at a time. I gotta get a job first. But as always, if you have thoughts, feelings, or revelations that you want to share with me, please feel free to hit me up on social media or within our free Facebook group or in our Patreon. All right, besties, I'll catch you next time. Your girl is out. Loving Real Talk Friend Therapy? Of course you are. So don't forget to show us some love with a 5-star review wherever you are listening and to join our Patreon to unlock bonus recordings, videos, private chats, and more.